Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John, the reporters for the 24th of June. So as we're ending the week, let me move that over just a little bit, make it easy to see. We're heading right to the 23%, just as expected. Interestingly enough, we're starting to see a magenta fade. That's critical if it dips below that 25. I would expect weakness to follow that. Would not be a surprise. Especially given where we're at. The fact that red MBI is already faded first, though, suggests that wouldn't take much of a push through the 23% to really turn things around. But you can already see on the DOC that even though you got rising red, and then you've got cyan moving forward, so shorts are getting more active as we get closer. That some of the early ones will hit it before the 23%. Certainly others are going to wait until after there's been some attempted break of it and a fade back. So that's at 38.44 range. And, it's like when we were down here, I was talking about a move back up towards that 38.15. That's exactly where we're at. So all in all, everything's performing pretty well to expectations. So no objection to that whatsoever. When we look at the NASDAQ, similar but a little bit better as far as an MBI reading. We don't have as much of a pivot from that MBI magenta, at least from a downward move, and well above 25 range at 29, so that's positive. A little stronger on the DOC spread for short, so that could be fuel to push that drive through, particularly if it gets a little momentum from an S&P, can really start to drive that, and of course that would be the catalyst for seeing the S&P move. Now, from a Euro standpoint, again, it's still problematic and better than where it's been. I mean, at least if it can hold above the 23%, it's got fading magenta in that, but white really hasn't taken charge of it, and the magenta is not below yellow yet, so it's still holding on to a somewhat bullish hold at this particular stage. And you can see also the DOC, the green staying above cyan, is giving it enough strength from a support standpoint that we would expect that 23% area at a minimum to hold if it's retested just under the 105 range. A further breakdown though of magenta below white, I particularly would look for below yellow to signal that we're going to be retracing towards that zero. So at this particular point, they may have stemmed the decay enough to hold things where it is. From a gold standpoint, again, having problems in this construct of, when is there hyperinflation versus a deflation. And the interesting thing is that we can have hyperinflation with price deterioration in certain areas and still see other commodities in that rise that really put a strain on things. So it's going to be a real interesting time period as you're dealing with gold in this setup, because I think in the short term it has pushed to the downside, but broadly, from a longer term perspective, it still looks to be attractive. So some of those dips into the lower areas I think are going to be certainly appetizing to a lot of people. Oil having dipped to the 50% retrace on there, making a move back up. You can see magenta over yellow. That's an improvement from that standpoint. We need to see orange dip down further to suggest that it's going to make a new run back up to the 100%, but not uncommon to see it pivot right at this particular area. Rising zero on the 100% though could put a little bit of downside pressure, at least cause it to just go sideways for a little bit. Keep an eye on that one. And of course, seems like an awful lot of flux to treasuries as rates continue to drive a little bit lower. Of course, there's some talk saying that the Fed is done with all of their rate hikes and that, and they're already making the case for a new round of quantitative easing, blah, 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 blah. That's sort of a joke construct in that standpoint. And another sign of decent stability, again, right at that 20,000 range, Bitcoin continues to find attraction from people, and that's keeping it above there. It's still not out of the woods as far as from a daily standpoint, but at least as long as you have magenta rising with yellow there and green DOC over cyan, you're in a better spot than otherwise the way things have been going prior to it. And from an ETH standpoint, nice run here from much more reduced action, which is interestingly enough, given all of the strain that everything's going through. It's been having bits and fits, but still overall fairly decent. And from a PK standpoint, we've been a little bit back and forth. We had a decent sell. It sort of turned around right here when the magenta crossed above and the blue moved above the gray zone at that particular spot. The earliest one was right at that 61% range, and it sort of progressed nicely from there. A couple of positive extremes. So this whole move is on a positive extreme on the 50K, which puts 3780 range, just over that as the downside point. So it was started off here where we had the early morning post-market setup that created the effective double bottom. Some might even think of it as a triple bottom because of this, but clearly it was enough to generate a strong turnaround. DSC, both MBI, shot up, and that created a couple of positive extremes as we filled back in the preceding right before open, and then when things opened, it was a lot of back and forth, mostly bearish side, and got some nice downward moves that started to build up with a series of P2s. And as that progressed going across, we ended up with nice buy configurations that were all on a series of positive extremes in varying stages, and that's where some of these retrace elements developed from. And then in the most recent run, you can see it's all a string of them going through here, and we would expect that some or not most of those get filled during the day regular trade, which will come up in a little bit. So that's the current state of things, and all looking good. As always, though, I'll be on the Skype chat. Trade well. Talk to you later.